list of prohibited items as they were used to breach gates and break into VIP areas. Of course, banning them probably wouldn't have done much anyway, because while drugs were prohibited, understaffed medical teams still struggled to deal with an overload of overdoses. Patient logs from medical contractors Paradox Worldwide showed that 54 people needed medical attention by 4 p.m, and by 8:15 p.m, they'd ran out of the naloxone needed to treat opioid overdoses. It reached a point where medical staff didn't even have the capacity to log individual patients, so it's impossible to know exactly how many people were actually treated. But whatever that number was, it was about to go up. At 8 p.m, SZA finished what would be the final performance on the Thrill stage so that everyone could gather at the Chill stage for Travis Scott's headlining performance. At 8:30 p.m, a countdown begins for Travis's performance. At 9:01 p.m, the countdown reaches 0, and the full force of the crowd surges forwards as Travis Scott comes out to the song Escape Plan. At this point, fans aren't just screaming from excitement, and the authorities are starting to get the first reports of a crowd crush, with somewhere between 40 to 55,000 people all surging forwards at once. Some people were being compressed in a way where they couldn't move their arms, and in some cases couldn't expand their chests enough to breathe. Less than 30 minutes into the set, an emergency vehicle awkwardly hobbles its way through the dense crowd, which some guy then climbs on top of. Travis Scott graciously paused his performance and asked people to make room for the vehicle, but somehow was unable to hear the cries to stop the show from the crowd.
Stop the show! Stop the show!
Houston, just make some motherfucking noise real quick, y'all.
Realizing they're going to have to find their own help, at least 5 911 calls are made by 9:35 p.m, while others start to climb scaffolding in order to tell camera operators they need to stop the show, who pretty much tell them to piss off. The idea of seeing people collapsing around you with grey skin and blue lips after being deprived oxygen and then just having everyone around you be completely indifferent to the situation is just such a terrifying thought. Some of these videos capture these awful scenes of people collapsing while everyone around is chanting to stop the show and looking for help, while other videos from the exact same time show people singing and dancing along, just blissfully unaware of what's happening, 50 meters away from them and what could potentially happen to them soon. It wasn't until 9:59 p.m, after 5 cases of cardiac arrest, that Travis hears via an earpiece that he needs to stop the show soon. He wasn't told to end the show now, though, so he decides that his suffering fans could use a pick-me-up in the form of a surprise performance by Drake. Despite Travis stopping the show 3 times to point out unconscious fans to his security, him and Drake would later state that they were completely unaware of the multiple chants from fans to stop. 1 minute before the show finally ends to the tune of Goosebumps, Rudy Pena is declared dead at an ER at 10:13 p.m. By the time 9-year-old Ezra Blount passed away on November 14th, the death toll had risen to 10. All of these casualties were from compression asphyxia, where there is an external force that is limiting the ability of the chest to expand and for air to get into the lungs. Astroworld's second day was cancelled. By November 9th, 820 victims and relatives had all filed suits totaling more than $3 billion in damages. While promoters, vendors, and security companies were amongst the list of defendants, Travis Scott was the big golden face of Astroworld, and he was catching a lot of flack. He was dropped as a headliner of Coachella 2022, was forced to discontinue his brand new Cactus Seltzer drink, and most devastatingly, his emotes were removed from Fortnite. In an attempt to appear human, Travis put out one of the worst apology videos I've ever seen. Unable to muster any real emotions besides the frustration that he has to deal with all this shit now, he instead attempts to convey sadness by constantly rubbing his forehead and putting a black and white filter over it. In the video, he takes zero responsibility for anything and asks his fans to go to the authorities if they have any information. Bro, shouldn't you have the information? But it took less than a year for things to turn around for old Travis. His first performance post Astroworld was just 6 months later at the 2022 Billboard Music Awards, and his latest album Utopia debuted at #1 on the Billboard Top 200. Sure, he had to settle a few cases out of court, But with renewed Nike and Dior partnerships, Travis basically got away with it scot-free. Hey, if you like this video, I'm sure you'd like the other festival scandals one if you haven't seen that yet. Otherwise, YouTube is just going to recommend some bullshit for you. I don't know what it is, but apparently it thinks you like it. So, I guess click that if you like.
Here at Papa John's, we know our stuff.
So try our garlic epic stuffed crust pizza, made with our iconic garlic sauce flavor, mixed with cheese and hand stuffed into that Papa John's original dough. No one stuffs a crust like Papa John's.
I'm Michelle Rodriguez. If you want to be a pirate, be ruthless.
If you're even considering a new Chrysler Dodge Jeep or Ram at Naples Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, we're so certain you'll love our selection and our pricing. We'll pay for your gas to come in for a test drive, or we'll ship your new ride to you for free. Only at Naples CDJR.
Festivals are a great way to celebrate music, culture, friendship, and sneaking drugs past sniffer dogs. But what if we added mud into the equation? These are the many scandals of music festivals. The original 1969 Woodstock was a defining moment in baby boomer culture, a generation-defining message of peace and love that over time was reinterpreted as, let's steal as much wealth as we can. That being said, stinky millennials like me and our Gen X brothers aren't much better. These Woodstocks reflected the zeitgeist of the time. Contrasting to the peace and love movement of the 1969 Woodstock, the 1990s was characterized by directionless anger and rampant consumerism that culminated in an explosion of emotion at the end of Woodstock 99. And by emotion, I mean fires. Hosted in upstate New York, Woodstock 99 was meant to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Woodstock, with two main stages, several secondary stages, and a nighttime rave hangar. There was no shortage of places to contract tinnitus. Before the event even began, things were off to a rocky start. The peace and love movement was now nothing more than a slogan to be stamped onto tees and sold for a profit. And this corporate mindset extended to the festival itself. The cheap early bird tickets were still $150 or around $260 today, which was expensive at the time. Of course, the absolutely stacked lineup would make it all worth it, featuring the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Metallica, DMX, Limp Bizkit, Korn, Alanis Morissette, Kid Rock, and Creed, just to name a few. The festival kicks off, and it is hot, but that's still preferable to rain, right? Just grab some shade and an overpriced beer and cool off in style. That was, if not for Woodstock 94. Woodstock 94, the previous Woodstock festival, was infamously referred to as Mudstock, after a storm slicked the grounds with mud, which festival goers would then pelt at the acts. To counter this, Woodstock 99 was hosted on an old airbase to minimize grassy areas and therefore mud. Aside from the irony of a peace and love festival taking place on a former military site, trees and plains have a bitter rival dating back centuries, which meant finding shade was also impossible. While Woodstock 94 had too much water, Woodstock 99 didn't have enough. While bottled water was already $4 on the first day, the vendors showed a lot of peace and love by jacking the prices up to $12 a bottle after realizing how sparse water was. There were free water fountains available, but they were so sparse that lines lasted hours. Outraged at the poor amenities available, some vigilantes broke the pipes, allowing water to flow freely for all. While this worked for a time, the water was now pooling and creating mud, the very thing the organizers wanted to avoid. On top of that, the soil was saturated with delicious chemicals and heavy metals from its time as a military installation, which was now leaching into the mud and turning into dum-dum soup. Adventurous water drinkers could always leave the festival grounds and go to the nearby town of Rome, New York. Unfortunately, the idea was hardly original, and the small town stores quickly ran dry. Even if you were one of the lucky ones to nab some bottles, security would force you to throw out any food or drink at the gates, unless you bribed them, of course. You see, instead of hiring the original 500 police officers they had planned, organizers hired mercenaries with scrupulous morals, whose only allegiance is to the highest bidder, as in temp job workers. While Lang tried to put a hippie spin on it by saying it was to avoid the influences of the police state or the government, this was just a flimsy cover so that they could cheap out on security and save more money. The security staff, who could have been spending their time trying to stop 9/11 if they knew it was going to happen, were unarmed, untrained, and uninterested in doing their jobs. Instead, they'd steal, confiscate alcohol and then drink it themselves, and even sell their security shirts to attendees in case you wanted to Agent 47 your way backstage to hang out with Flea. Some security allegedly demanded sexual favors from female attendees, which is an unfortunate recurring theme of the festival. Multiple bands had to call out gropings that they could see from the stage, and at least 5 cases of sexual assault were reported, although the real number would obviously be much higher. Even Woodstock's official website joined in, posting photos of topless women without their consent, along with some real peace and love type captions like "nice pair" and "show us your tits," forgetting that they in fact were already doing that. Sheryl Crow also alleged that somebody threw feces at her while she performed My Favorite Mistake, fittingly. Of course, the feces flinger might have thought it was just mud, as the toilets had begun to overflow from the 250,000 guests, which then mixed with the radioactive mud pits created by the broken water fountains. Believing the mud was crafted from regular dirt and not shit water, some people began slipping and sliding in the brown bog to cool down, resulting in a number of cases of trench foot and trench mouth. This also